What's good, Lucky Lefty Podcast? I'm your guy, Shaun Davidson, SD2 Mics. As always, we're brought to you by Onora Whiskey, OnoraWhiskey.com. And it's that premium American whiskey, OnoraWhiskey.com. And if you're going to drink, make sure that you drink responsibly. Probably going to give you an hour. I had to stick around because of rain last night. Some issues with my basement. Landed in Indianapolis this morning, and he is making his way to South Bend a little bit later. I think he's going to jump in a few minutes. He said he was going to lay down and get him a nap. But we are excited to be in the South Bend area. Don't forget, we're locking in 2-hour show tomorrow, special guests, and then we'll be going to the pantry, giving away food to the less fortunate, and culminating with the South Side YMCA or South Bend YMCA. And then left from 4 to 7, he has an appearance. And we'll be there from 4 to 7 at Lucky's, if I'm not mistaken. I'll get the correct information before the end of the show. All right. Apple Podcast, Spotify, CFB Nation. If you go to the YouTube page, make sure you subscribe. And then that thumb, the up, hit that. Helps with our views. Hit that like button. Hit the notification bell. And then whether or not your Android, iPhone, tablet, whatever you choose to listen to the audio edibles that we give every day, just go to CFB Nation right now. Go to CFB Nation on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Just go search CFB Nation. Get great content. Not just us. Rise and Draft from Ryan Roberts. Then you have CFB All-American. They have great guys. Next week, we're going to have most of the hosts on CFB Nation on with us to kind of celebrate CFB Nation and what we have planned coming up for this fall and this summer. So you already know we're the home of the misguided passion. It's the Lucky Lefty Podcast. We spin it different. So now we got that out of the way. Hopefully Left will jump in when he awakens. I really didn't want to bother him. He caught that red eye from LA. Landed an hour later than scheduled, and then making a drive to wherever you had to get to in Indianapolis. I told him to go ahead and lay it down. And whenever he can join us would be just fine today because we have plenty to talk about. We're going to talk about the wide receivers and the cornerbacks making each other better at Notre Dame. It's been a long time since we had that type of competition. I would say probably about 4 years. You know what's so crazy, man? I was watching the Wake Forest game for 2018. Sam Hartman was a starter as a freshman, much smaller. And he was just getting ravaged by the Notre Dame defensive line all day. But even more than that, Michael Young, he had a costly fumble in the first quarter of that game, but the run after the catch was incredible, right? And then he had another great catch in the second quarter for about 50 yards. He cuts all the way across the field and finally gets tackled at the 3-yard line. And, of course, eventually he transfers, but it's just like, I think that was because they got Kevin Austin. You had him, Kevin Austin. They were the young guys. And you still had Fink, Chase Claypool. I mean, the wide receiver room at that point was highly competitive and thick. And then once it started getting hit with the transfers, injuries, they just never recovered until recently. And now the wide receiver room is up to a point to where the numbers are looking pretty good. And more than that, man, Chancey Stuckey is very impressed with the amount of talent in that room.
I think the talent level has jumped big time, bringing the 3 freshmen in. I think the competitiveness of the room, top to bottom, because you add 3 guys to the room that really have some great skill sets, that makes the room better. And then the guys around them see that, it's like, okay, everyone's making plays, maybe I need to do more. So the goal is to create such a high level of competition that guys have a no choice standard but to get better.
Appreciate you, Coach Stuck. The talent in the room was definitely elevated by the 3 freshmen. And I think that's something we pointed out. Coach Stuckey, when he met with the media, he pointed out something as well. Him along with the staff, they expected the 3 freshmen to hit a wall during spring practice. But they never did. As Coach Stuckey explained, he said they kind of ran through the wall and knocked it down. And now, as they get closer to the blue and gold game, they're making plays consistently in practice at a high level. So that just shows you how recruiting talented players can make you look much better as a coach, right? We say this all the time. You can be a great coach, but you look so much better when you have great talent, right? You go find any great coach, any league, college, pros, I guarantee you the talent that they coached was pretty elite in order for them to be considered a great coach. So one of the things that I think some people disagree with, and I said this, is that Coach Stuckey is under the microscope for me. And what that means is, no, his job is not on the line. No, he's not on a hot seat. But the quarterback room is better. The talent is better in the wide receiver room. Shouldn't that equal more production from the wide receivers? I'm just asking the question. If the quarterbacks are better and the talent is better, shouldn't that equal more production from the wide receiver room? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say 30% more, 40% more, 50% more, but there should be a stark difference in the wide receiver production from last year and the wide receiver production in 2023. Matter of fact, it shouldn't even be close. Shouldn't even be close. And I think that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing. Now, we're going to talk about the draft and the things that jumped out at us from the draft. That's the LL question of the day. What jumped out to you from the blue and gold game draft? And shout out to the way they structured it. I thought the structure was much better. Shout out to Marcus Freeman. We kind of talked about this in our blue and gold game preview. We anticipated that pressure would not be allowed as much as we've seen in the spring practices. And they're only allowed to pressure 1 out of every 4 downs for the first 3 quarters. When it gets to the 4th quarter, all bets are off. Win the game by any means necessary. So the 4th quarter should be very competitive. But, a lot of people I guess they were taken back when I made the statement that, look, Chancey Stuckey's under the microscope for me. He came in last year. He didn't have a deep room. You have to change some tendencies and change the mindset of the room and transform that room. You did that. You have to go out and recruit talent to that room. You did that. You got better quarterbacks on the roster. Now we need to see the production. Now it's time to see production. It's as simple as that. It's really A plus B equals C. It really is. Lucky Lefty Podcast. Coach Stuckey also talked about that standard he mentioned when he was talking about the talent.
That really sticks out is Tobias. Making such a big jump from last year to now and challenging him. It's like all the work last year mentally, because he has the physical part that he's made huge strides in. He's become a leader for us. So watching him has been great. As you get to know the freshmen and seeing how they respond, okay, what kind of buttons can you push, and what motivates them, it's still an ongoing process. So we have 3.5 more months to really get ready, and now they know the standard going into the summer and then into the fall, kind of what's expected and the tempo of practice and the standard of the room.
Standard of the room for me. I remember having a conversation with Chancey Stuckey, like as soon as he got to Notre Dame. He was so gracious, man. He was so gracious. And I believe it was myself and Tyler Horker that was standing there. And we were talking about everything from him finding his coffee spot and his Ethiopian coffee that he loves, and taking morning runs with his wife, and then he started talking about the breakdown of what he wanted to create in the wide receiver room and the vision that he had, and being able to explain it in the form of modern day basketball. And he also said that he would prefer that his wide receivers actually play basketball as a second sport because it gives them a certain level of agility and body control in the air to go up and make 50-50 catches. I said, okay. So when you see like a Jaden Greathouse, when you see a Braylon James, keep that in mind. When you see a Dorian Brew in the class of 25 out of Ohio, who is a two-sport athlete, he might be better at basketball, honestly. Keep that in mind. And he's talking about this vision. And he's like, yo, I want my wing players to be the go-getters, to do everything. I can line them up anywhere, right? That's my guard, my small forward. My point guard has to be the leader. He has to be the captain. He has to be able to go and get the tough catches. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, man, then you have my red zone guy, my 50-50 guy, my big, tall guys. And one of them has to have versatility to be able to, kind of handle the ball and do things on the perimeter as well as handle the paint. And, he's like, those are the guys I'm going to be going after. Some tall guys, 6'4", 6'3", that are fast, but that can also run. And I said to myself, yo, that's interesting. I remember asking him, do you have any of those guys on the roster now? And he said, yeah, I have a few guys on the roster that can do that. Some of the things that I'm looking for. But I could tell his vision was like connected to guys that he had already checked out, looked at their film, scouted them to say, man, this is the guy I want. I can tell you one of the guys right now that he was super excited about, one of the guys that fit what he wanted, that he didn't end up with in the class, was Rodney Gallagher. He didn't mention him by name, but I could tell, just based upon how good Rodney Gallagher was in basketball and how multifaceted he was and how he lined up everywhere, how dynamic he was, that was definitely one of the guys that he worked. I mean, he went hard for Rodney Gallagher. And for the most part, it looked like he was going to end up with Notre Dame until, influences and people in his life influenced him to stay closer to home and go to West Virginia. So, but I just remember having that conversation and him talking about the makeup of his wide receiver room and what the standard would be and how they would go hard. Let me tell you, I respect any coach that goes out and researches how to make himself or themselves better in order to impact their kids. And this is something that Coach Stuckey has done. He's searched out techniques from outside sources that develop wide receivers, not only at the collegiate level, but at the professional level, how they teach, how they make their bodies better, how they strengthen their muscles, how they allow themselves to be more flexible. He's gone out, he's researched this, and he's brought some of those techniques back, right? And it's one of the techniques was the one leg the one leg hop into your release package. That's one of the things that we saw towards the end of camp last year, and has become very prevalent and the norm in their warm ups this year. And we saw the release packages, Braden Lindsay, the release package clip. We saw the release packages definitely improve because we saw Braden Lindsay open the majority of the year. Quarterbacks just weren't able to really connect with him, or else he would have had a much more impressive senior season on his way out. But I'm very impressed with what Chancey Stuckey has built in the wide receiver room to this point. He's done an incredible job, right? And when you do an incredible job and everything is set up the way it should be set up, now the proof has to be in the pudding, right? We have to see the production. So yeah, I'm watching. I'm watching. And it's tomorrow, not tomorrow, but Saturday going to be the start of, I think, Marcus Freeman kind of putting that one of four plays you're only allowed to pressure. I think that's him, which we kind of said in our blue and gold preview. That's him calling off the dogs a little bit to say, okay, let's see our offense make some plays. Let's see our skill position guys go up against one another, mano a mano, and see who can come away with the victory. Whether it's wide receiver against defensive back or whether it's running back against linebacker. Of course, we know the defensive lines and the offensive line have something to say in the running game and the passing game as far as protection. But I was happy to hear Marcus Freeman say something like that because I was like, yo, if Al Golden is allowed to just call plays the way he's been calling them all spring, I don't know if this is going to be a high-scoring blue and gold game. But now that I see the format, I expect points to go up on the board because there's tons of talent offensively for Notre Dame to show off on Saturday. Lucky Enough Podcast. Shaun Davis, CFB Nation. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just go and search CFB Nation. Lock us in. Automatic downloads for Apple Podcasts. Make sure you lock us in. Our website is going to go live. Each day, our podcast will be embedded to the website, so you will have immediate availability for the audio edible we give you every day right here on the Lucky Lefty Podcast via luckyleftypod.com. It's going to be live very soon. And you know what? I'm a perfectionist. It probably would have been live in the middle of the week, but I keep bugging our creator about different changes. Like, can you change this? Can you make this look this way? Can you make this look that way? So I'm probably getting on their nerves with all the changes. But at the end of the day, we just really wanted to look really clean for the fans and for Notre Dame fans. So Coach Stuckey, there's been an addition to the wide receiver room that might not have been expected coming out of the last season, but it has been a pleasant surprise, according to most that have reported and watched practice, and that is running back Chris Tyree, now slot receiver Chris Tyree. What has it been like for Chris Tyree, Coach Stuck?
He's such a veteran presence, and he's not like anyone we've had in our room. You know, he has great acceleration. He's shown great hands, and he's picked it up so fast just because of the knowledge that he has. You know, I was expecting a bigger curve, but you know, by practice 2 or 3, you can see, hey, this dude can really help us. And he's really bought into learning. He takes coaching. You know, he's very cerebral, but he's brought an element of speed, an element of short area quickness, you know, that we didn't have in the room. So he's been a great asset.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just watching him in the practices that we were allowed to watch, I'm very interested in getting into the season and to see how teams attack Chris Tyree in the slot. Whether or not they go nickel or even big dime and put a defensive back on him, or whether or not they try to have a safety defend him in short spaces. Please don't put a linebacker on him in coverage. It's not going to go well for your defense. But Chris Tyree in the slot, in a way, kind of dictates to defenses what they might have to do in order to combat his ability to get open in short spaces and then his ability to run after the catch. Like, how are you going to come at that as a defensive coordinator? It's going to be something to see how defensive coordinators choose to attack Notre Dame with Chris Tyree in the slot, right? And it's so different because they can come out 21 personnel, right? Or they can come out 20 personnel, honestly, and still motion Chris Tyree out of the backfield. And do a lot of different things. So I don't know. For a long time, Notre Dame has used the run game to dictate the pass game. This might be a year where we see Notre Dame use the passing game to dictate the run game. And that's going to be very interesting, right? Where Notre Dame comes out, and because of the team that they're facing, they're going to allow their passing game to set up and establish the run game rather than it being the other way around, which has been the norm for Notre Dame football for a lot of years. So I think they have that ability, and it's going to be interesting to see against which opponents they choose to use that type of strategy. Chris Tyree, he met with the media and he talked about, going from running back to wide receiver.
I think it helps me after the catch with, beating different angles, making people miss in space. But honestly, right now I'm just working on having that expertise as a receiver, knowing where to line up, knowing how to work pre and post snap. So that's what I've been working with Coach Steph and Coach Parker so far.
So yeah, it's amazing hearing. He's so chill, man. Like he talks about what is a difficult transition for most. You come to Notre Dame, you're supposed to be a big time running back, game changer. It just never seemed like Notre Dame figured out how to use you out of the backfield, right? And then you get these two big young kids, and Audrey Estime and Logan Diggs, who just kind of come in and just gobble up all the snaps. And then you find yourself, moving a wide receiver, but you find yourself being very comfortable with the transition, especially the way that you're being used. And I go to say, man, why didn't they figure this out a year ago, 2 years ago, right? Because how many times have we seen Chris Tyree catch balls out of the backfield? You can go back to the Fiesta Bowl, ball out of the backfield, big play. So he's always had that ability. And he talked about how much fun it's been working at wide receiver this spring.
In the transition to
Being able to work in space. I feel like that's the part that I like the most, just having so much space out there, being able to use a little bit more creativity, having a plan with my route running, stuff like that. That's what I've been working with Coach Steph and Coach Parker, so it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun. It's been pretty fun. You know why? With all athletes, all they ever want is the ball in their hands in space, right? It's as simple as that. And honesty, whether it's Steve Sarkisian or Urban Meyer, talking about OCs that do an incredible job of just getting the ball to their athletes. Not worried about the position, not worried about whether or not they're lined up in the backfield or they're in the slot or what route they're running. Just finding plays to get them the ball in space so they can do what they do best. That's going to be the interesting thing for Jared Parker as the OC. How do you get Chris Tyree in space with opportunities to make plays for the Notre Dame offense? Right? I don't think he's about to come out and run like this incredible route tree. I think we can expect option routes, drag routes, various crossing routes, maybe some out routes, quick screens, things of that nature. Get the ball to him as quick as you can and let his ability to make people miss in space, let it become an asset, a valuable asset for the Notre Dame offense. So, um, should be interesting, right? That bear is watching. Once again, just like I say, the improved talent that Coach Stuckey talked about in the wide receiver room, bear is watching with the production in connection with the improved quarterback play. It's the same thing with Chris Tyree. You can't have a weapon like that who seems to have made a seamless transition to wide receiver in the slot and you don't use him. You don't get the ball in his hands. The Bears watching, very interested in the multiple ways they choose to get the ball in Chris Tyree's hands. And maybe we'll get a preview of that on Saturday during the Blue and Gold game. Lucky Lefty podcast. So moving forward, I think we're going to hear, when we hear from the defensive backs, we're going to hear from them how they feel like the wide receiver room, they agree with Chancey Stuckey. The talent is much better, even the young talent, and how that has allowed them to look at the game a different way and get even better. We'll have that on the other side with Mike Mickens and his defensive backs coming up shortly. We heard from Coach Stuckey. We heard from Chris Tyree. So I know the guy you want to hear from in the wide receiver room. This is the guy with all the buzz, right? This is the guy absolutely no one last year when he showed up in the fall. No one could defend him. He was beating everyone, but yet still he couldn't get on the field. Yet still you couldn't find 5 plays, 5 targets for this young man, even though he was just ripping through defense and defensive backs in practices. We kept hearing he's not ready. He's not ready. But gosh darn it, he's ready right now. You better believe it. We're talking about none other than Tobias Merriweather.
Really fast. Like, I was talking to Ben the other day, and we're like, we almost been here for a year. And I think, like, just coming in every day is like a grind. You're like, dang, this is never going to be over. And then, like, now looking back, it's something like that. So it's just been really fast. It's been a good time. A lot of growth, a lot of learning.
And then what are a couple areas that you've kind of focused on this spring?
I think getting in and out of breaks, making contested catches, and just getting the playbook.
They can't teach size. With your size, how do you use your size to your advantage?
I think it comes with like making those contested catches, like I said, down the field, lay hands, using your body to get away from defenders and going up top and grabbing it.
And where have you improved the most in your receiving ability?
I think just consistency. Like last summer I'd be like going in and out, making plays, and then getting thrashed to the sideline. But now it's like more consistent, making more plays, doing the right thing, all that.
Does it help your confidence that you're on the field more often now?
Well, I think in terms of practice, like I was having consistent reps, but being with that one group, having Sam and Tyler back there with JT and Dion, it's just been a lot of confidence we built within each other, and we know what we're going to do. We know like situationally where the ball's going and what they're looking at. So it's been really good for confidence and just morale.
Going into a second season with Chancey Stuckey now, how's that relationship grown?
I think it's grown a lot. Like he's really tough on the first year guys right now. Like I'm like looking back like, damn, that was just me. And I think just growing with him, you're able to see that like he does that for a reason. He's hard on you for a reason because like he's hard on you because they're gonna be hard on you when you're playing. No one's gonna give you a rep off. You're not gonna be able to just say, oh my bad, and go back to the next one. Like game's on the line, you gotta make the play.
I like that towards the end. Game is on the line, you got to make a play. That's it. I want to hear about excuses. It's interesting. You know what? That's one of my pet peeves, right? As a competitor, when you're on a team and you're in clutch moments, the guys that would always be like, my fault, man, it would make my skin just crawl, bro. Like, no kidding. No one else threw the ball away. No one else turned the ball over. Yes, it's your fault. Yes, we know it's your fault. He used to make my skin crawl. Like, dude, Just don't do it. And you won't have to say my bad. But it's been a lot of my bad in the wide receiver room at Notre Dame over the last couple of years, I would say. A lot of my bad, even from the quarterbacks. My bad. I know you were wide open for that post route that was a touchdown. My bad. No. Teams that say my bad on scoring opportunities normally end up losing games. When the opportunities are there, make the plays. I was actually texting with B. Drisk last night, and he was like, yo, I'm watching this Alabama-Tennessee game. And he's like, yo, I have so much respect for Bryce Young. You know, because Bryce Young was injured. And he was like, yo, I have so much respect for this kid. Like, he's the only reason they're in this game at Tennessee. And there is no my bad, right? They lost the game. There is no, man, my bad. No. Make the plays, right? Make the plays. Alabama had an opportunity to make a third down conversion. They missed, right? Bryce Young took it on himself, said that's on me, even though it was a drop pass. Their field goal kicker misses. Tennessee gets the ball, and then Hooker drives him down the field. They block the kick, and it still gets over the crossbar to win the game. Tennessee wins the game. I mean, that's same thing with LSU and Alabama. Like, Alabama had the opportunity, like in that game, to put the game away. They miss a third down. LSU gets the ball back, ties it up, wins it on a 2-point conversion. You know, that is high-level sports, high-level Division I football, Power 5 football at its best. And I think with Notre Dame, if you go back and you look at the 2 games against Georgia, or you look at the games they've lost against Clemson, there have been plenty of opportunities. I go back to 2018, the matchup early against Clemson, whether it's the turnovers or Ian Book fumbling on their side of the field with the opportunity to hit McKinney on a post route. The opportunities have been there in big games for Notre Dame, right? But you've just gotten a lot of my bad. Man, that's my bad. And that's something that has to change at Notre Dame. You know, I'm glad Tobias Merriweather said that. Things have to go from my bad to, yo, nice play. Good stuff. Yeah, that's what's up, boy. Good expletive. That's what has to change. You can't have any more my bad in big games at Notre Dame when it comes to big opportunities, whether it's offensively or defensively. You get the opportunity to make the play, make the play. Tobias Merriweather is telling you we have to make the plays. That's the mantra this year. I'm so happy to hear that from a young wide receiver. Like, we could talk all this talk about the spring, but what's going on? We have to make plays. It warms my heart to hear a young man recognize, yo, everything is set up. Everything is set up for us. There's no more excuses. It's time for us to make plays. Glad to hear that from the young man who was laughing. One of the other things he said when he spoke to the media, he said, yo, I'm sitting up here saying to myself, yo, I haven't even been on campus for a year. You know, he came during the fall. Him and Benjamin Morrison, they showed up at the same time. They haven't been on campus for a full year. And we have expectations for the both of them that are probably through the roof, right? Through the roof. 2 kids that haven't been on the Notre Dame campus for more than a year. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. So I think this wide receiver room, as much as we look for it to add points to the scoreboard for Notre Dame, I truly think they've had a positive impact on the defensive backs. I truly do. I'm not sure if the cornerbacks were truly challenged last year in spring or fall practices. I don't know if they were truly challenged. That's a totally different narrative here in 2023 as we sit 2 days out from the blue and gold game. I think the challenge has been incredible, right? And Tobias Merriweather talked about this, how there's constant chirping back and forth between the defensive backs and the wide receivers on the field and off the field and in the locker room when they're getting ready for practice, and how they look at each other like, okay, we have to go put it on them today. You see, they're talking that smack. Let's go put in work. You'd love to hear that, man. Iron sharpens iron, right? Iron sharpens iron. So you love to hear stuff like that. You love to hear stuff like that. Apple Podcast, Spotify, CFB Nation. Sometimes a good chunks of Irish Breakdown. This fall exclusively on CFB Nation. YouTube, that thumb that goes up, hit it for us. Helps with the views. We respond to all comments. Leave 5 stars for us over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We give you all the audio edibles each and every day. Home of the Misguided Passion, Lucky Lefty podcast. We spin it different. How much better have the wide receivers made the defensive backs? Well, you might as well hear it from them. On the other side, Lucky Lefty podcast. Thanks, guys, for tapping in with us today. Travel day for Left. So I left it up to him. I told him it was optional whether or not he jumped in today. We have a special 2-hour show waiting for us tomorrow in conjunction with the food pantry. Thank you to Costco for sponsoring us tomorrow. And then we'll end up at the South Bend. I keep saying South Side, South Bend YMCA. The South Bend YMCA. And it's going to be a very, very great day. Self-fulfilling, because of the work I do with children here in the Chicagoland area. And anytime we can give back, anytime we can give back to the community, it's a great thing. It's an absolute great thing. I want to talk about the defensive backs. And Mike Mickens has done an incredible job, in my opinion. An incredible job. I think as I watched him at the podium, I didn't realize, Mike, you guys watch this? Mike Mickens has extremely long arms, man. Extremely long arms. Right? So I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, I see why. I see the prototype of cornerback that you like. But he's done an incredible job identifying talent, getting the talent in, and getting them ready to play, right? Just getting them ready to play. And I think that continues, right, with what he brought in with Micah Bell and Christian Gray in the 23 class. But more than that, it's kind of like the culture he set. And it goes from Cam Hart and even last year, Tariq Bracy and those guys. And it just matriculates down to the youngsters. And he talked about that, just the benefit of having a veteran group in that cornerback room.
Just You got a veteran group, a lot of guys in the room that play a lot of ball, understand the expectations of it, the standard of it, and they help each other. You know, that's the great thing about this group. You know, they have great unit strength, they got great love for each other, healthy competition, and all they want is the next man to be better and grow each day.
What are you learning from the group?
That they're dependable, that I know what I'm going to get with them. They're consistent. They're going to come to work every day, on the field, off the field, and they want to be great. You know, and that's what I want from them. You know, what can we do? Get all the dreams and goals.
Dreams and goals. Dreams and goals. That's funny. You know, you get a kid in, man, what do you want to do? We're going to set you on the path to accomplish that goal and realize all your dreams. And it seems like that's what we've seen, right? There's so much respect in that room because, and I've said this plenty of times, I don't care whether or not, I don't care what you think of Cam Hart and his play. There's so much profound respect for Cam Hart in that within that program, not just on the defensive side of the ball, on both sides of the ball for what he represents on that campus, in the student body, in the classroom, and the leader that he truly is in that locker room. When you talk about needing someone or having someone to look up to when a young man steps into that position room, Cam Hart is that guy. He's been that guy for a couple of years now. And he has tremendous value. So to have a veteran group like that and have a guy, even if you don't think he's elite talent, he's dependable. Now, is he available all the time? Now, that's availability, right? Is the best ability. Can he stay healthy? Right? And I think the depth of the room is going to give them a lot of opportunities to take snaps away from Cam Hart, especially early in the game, right? You get a Jaden Mickey, right? You get a Christian Gray who had the scope, minor issues with his knee. It was kind of one of the practices we were at. He was wearing one of those black braces. It really wasn't. It was more of a sleeve, not really a brace. So it was more of a. It seemed like it was more of like a tendonitis thing, possibly that was bothering him. But Mark Freeman said he had a minor scope. Coach Mickens said he's aggressive. He's going hard at the rehab. But more than that, he has to stop coming in, putting this extra work in with film time every day. And that's what you love to see. That's what you love to see from young men. You love to see it. And not only that, it's one thing for your coach to talk about you, but it's a whole nother thing when your coach talks about the leadership that's spread throughout the classes in that position room. Check this out.
Great leadership, right? You get the best of both worlds. You got a Cam Hart that's been around, played a lot of ball for us, that's very vocal in the room and gets the guys going in that way. And then you got a Clarence Lewis who's played a lot of ball here as well, who's a more action guy that is going to show you how hard he practices every day and how the same approach that he does every day with it. And then you see that, and then you get a Ben Morrison and a Jaden Mickey that's younger, but they're growing and becoming mature and speaking up as well with it as well. You know, and then it's just like a wildfire with it.
So he goes from the senior class all the way down to the sophomore class, talking about leadership within that room. Jaden Mickey is a firecracker, man. And listen to him talk. He was talking about how he came in as an early enrollee and just competed, right? Just off raw talent. I'm just competing and just bringing energy to the practice field. And now one full season with Coach Mickens and understanding the position and what he's being asked to do. Man, He's a totally different player. Totally different player. And a perfect candidate to give Cam Hart less reps during big time games. And shout out. Can we take time to give a shout out to Jay Mickey and continued prayers to his mother and for his mom and her battle? Continued prayers for the family, but just a round of applause, man, for who Jay Mickey is as a young man, as a representative and ambassador of the University of Notre Dame, off the field as well as on the field, and all the philanthropic work he does back home in the California area, and how he's ingratiated himself with the South Bend area as well with his charitable works. Yeah. Salute to you, young man. Salute to you. Never stop. Keep building on that and keep doing the work. Keep doing the work. Keep that, as some people say, the old people used to say in the church, keep sending timber up to heaven for your mansion. That's what the old people used to say in church. Keep sending that timber up to heaven to build your mansion, young man. Lucky Lefty Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up button. Hit that. Helps with our views. We greatly appreciate it. Apple Podcast, Spotify, CFB Nation. You get your audio edible each and every day over at CFB Nation. Home of the Misguided Passion. Myself, Malik, we are the Onora boys. You know how we do it. We spend it different each and every day. Lucky Lefty Podcast. It's amazing how, when you think about the defensive backfield and the quarterbacks, we thought they were pretty good last year with the rise of Benjamin Morrison. And it's only right that we hear from Benjamin Morrison talk about the transition and following up what can only be recognized as one of the best freshman campaigns as a defensive back at the University of Notre Dame.
People in the room, the players in the room, the leadership in the room, having Cam Hart coming back has been just awesome. Me still being a young player, we have Christian Gray, Mickey, Silu, and the new addition of Zoe in spring. I mean, it's just our room. We have depth, and I just feel as if like that's the best thing about DB room is having depth and people we can trust to go out there and execute what they're asked to do.
Talk about your off season. What prepared you for the spring to become a better back?
Just understanding the defense in general, like as a whole. I felt as if last year I was just trying to just play my position and just play the man in front of me. But I've been able to understand the whole defense. We're trying to still understand the whole defense and just why I'm in the position I am, and just being okay with like working on things. That's been the biggest thing, is trying to work on things that I didn't do last year. So just trying to grow my game.
How have you kind of handled the hype coming out of last year?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's no hype or pressure. I feel as if like this is just the position that I've been blessed to be in. So I wouldn't say there's hype or anything. I just know that as a DB, I want to become the best DB I could be, and player I can be. So if I read too much into the hype, I mean, you just can't do that. So yeah.
And then what's it just kind of been like having Zoe working at corner a little bit?
No, it's awesome. I mean, Zoe's athletic. He's a freak of athlete. Can jump, can catch, can run. So that's what we want as a DB, and he's physical. So it's a great addition, and he pushes all of us to become the best DB we can be.
And then what does Christian Gray bring to the room on and off the field?
Just that little brother, just that one little brother you always have. Christian, he's a funny guy. He's also a great player. So that's just awesome to have a guy like that. I see a lot of myself in him. So it's cool just being able to walk him through things that I had to go through last year. I didn't really roll last year, but it's the same transition. When you go on campus, there's going to be things that you don't know what to do or understand. So just having that person to go to is awesome. Reek was that for me last year, so it's nice being that for Christian.
I don't know why, but that question kind of angered me for a second, and I had to catch myself and realize that's a solid question. It's a solid question. Because I don't think anything about Benjamin Morrison is hype. Like, hype is when you haven't played against anybody, haven't done anything. You build up this hype, right? Hype was like, remember Ricky Hatton? All this hype Prince Nassim, remember that dude? All this hype, and they really hadn't faced big time talent. And the moment both of them faced big time talent, they got knocked out. Remember that? Benjamin Morrison isn't hype, man. You don't do what you do against the competition he did it against on the stages he did it on. And it's considered hype. Now, can he recreate a similar season? I mean, that's tough. That's like asking if Marty Biaggi and the special teams are going to be able to recreate what Coach Mason did last year. I mean, they can still be really good as a special teams unit and never have a magical season like they did last year. Right? Benjamin Morrison can play. Mike Mickens can come up here 5 games into the season and say, man, Benjamin Morrison is playing better than he played last year, and he doesn't have an interception. And some people will look strictly at the numbers and say, well, that doesn't make sense. Shouldn't he have interceptions? Numbers don't tell the full story sometimes. They just don't. Numbers don't tell the full story sometimes. And so, with that matter, I think it's understandable to recognize that Benjamin Morrison just might be a dude, right? You heard Sean Crawford, who was on with us earlier this week, talk about, hey, he's different, man. It's not easy to play the position and to run full speed, trying to cover somebody and then turn your head and find the ball in the air and then high point it. And the level of confidence at which he does that, and the level of ease at which he does that, leads you to believe that this is who he is and this is who he's going to be. And he's going to get even better at doing it because it's not easy. Everyone can do what he can do. And that's coming from, one of the most respected defensive backs that's come through Notre Dame. One of the most persevering defensive backs to ever come through. To tell you, like, man, what's difficult for a lot of us, he does it with ease. That speaks volumes, So it was actually a good question. It was a fair question. But hype, just how do you live up to, last year? Like, how do you build upon that? But for one moment, not for one moment do I believe the word hype should be connected to Benjamin Morrison. I don't think there's no hype. He produced. He produced. Now, will they throw at him this year? Will quarterbacks be scared to throw at him? That's a totally different question, man. We'll have to wait and see about that. But as for right now, you love what he said about Christian Gray. I love that. He said, I see a lot of myself in him. I think Mike Mickens saw a lot of Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray. Right? We already knew Christian was the life of the party, big personality, full of jokes. But the tenacity he has to learn the position, to go hard, and the normal anticipation he has, is absolutely insane. He plays the position like it's not something he's learning. It's something he's evolving in. And that's Benjamin Morrison as well. It's almost like this is who he was born to be. He has the gifts, and he's evolving into becoming better at it day after day. And it's the same feeling you get when you watch Christian Gray. Very natural at the position. Reads things. anticipates very well, and then just goes out and plays. So, looking forward, even though he won't be playing in the blue and gold game, looking forward to seeing him back on the field for fall camp and his short rehab stint. I'm looking forward to seeing both of those guys. Lucky Enough podcast, man. Let's see. We heard from Benjamin Morrison. Who do you guys want to hear from? Let's go ahead and hear from Cap, the captain himself, Cam Hart.
Well, I haven't gone up against the wide receivers since Boston College League. I've been out, but thinking about in the past, I would say something they're really good at is just their motor. A lot of guys are really confident in themselves, and comparing the game and practice, there's a lot of chatter going on, and that just gets me mentally prepared. We have a lot of good route runners, so I would say that. And then just our relationship, I guess. I know, like, when I'm approaching the game, I'm studying the receiver in and out, studying what that receiver is going to do, and then when I'm thinking about our receivers, we have distinct receivers. So when I'm going against JT, I'm going to guard JT different than I'm guarding deep. You know what I mean? So just that approach. We don't have like a similar receiver group.
That's Cam Hart. I want to play that one more time because he starts to get into like what the wide receivers really mean for them. Listen to what he says one more time. This is Cam Hart talking about the wide receiver group, the improved talent, and how it's helping him along with the rest of the DBs.
I haven't gone up against the wide receivers since Boston College League. I've been out, but thinking about in the past, I would say something they're really good at is just their motor. A lot of guys are really confident in themselves, and comparing the game and practice, there's a lot of chatter going on, and that just gets me mentally prepared. We have a lot of good route runners, so I would say that. And then just our relationship, I guess. I know, like, when I'm approaching the game, I'm studying the receiver in and out, studying what that receiver is going to do, and then when I'm thinking about our receivers, we have distinct receivers. So when I'm going against JT, I'm going to guard JT different than I'm guarding deep. You know what I mean? So just that approach. We don't have like a similar receiver group.
Yeah. Thank you, Cam. You're darn right. It's a different wide receiver room. So now we just can't line up and just handle business like we could last year. Now we have to think about, man, who am I sticking? Am I sticking Rico? Because Rico does this totally different than Jaden Greathouse. So I'm sticking Braylon. He can run straight past me because he takes the top off the ball. Here's Tobias. He can do everything. Oh, snap. We got Chris Tyree in the slot now. Like, if he playing zone, like, man, keep your eyes on him. You got Jaden Thomas, who's the Incredible Hulk of the group, who said he put on 10 pounds of muscle in the offseason with improved speed when he spoke to the media. Look, man, when you have that type of diversity and playmaking in the wide receiver room, now you're challenging the thought process of playing a position of cornerback. And that's how iron sharpens iron. You just can't line up and just play now. You can't do that. That's what I love about Benjamin Morrison, man. He takes the challenge. Doesn't matter who lines up in front of him. He walks right up, helmet to helmet, face mask to face mask. I'm shutting you down either way. I'm shutting you down either way. And that's the type of confidence, that I've seen in practice from him. But Cam Hart talks about the camaraderie in that defensive back room and the culture that's flowed through Mike Mickens down through guys like Tariq Bracy and him. Clarence Lewis also spoke to the media, just talked about how he's gotten much better and how resilient he's had to be in his time at Notre Dame, getting over the mistakes, believing in himself, having coaches that believe in him, even though everybody else seems to think that another position might be better for him. He feels like he's just happy being part of this room, this team, and ready to make an impact and make plays. And Clarence Lewis made some plays last year, ladies and gentlemen. But coming off that Fiesta Bowl, I know most of the fan base was upset from what they saw. But he made plays last year, and he improved last year. Could it be possible that he can make another improvement? Could it be possible that he could get even better in the 2023 campaign? He's definitely an asset in the slot with his length and his size. Big time asset to replace Tariq Bracy in the slot and allow the other young DBs to be able to get in, whether it's at field or boundary. He has value. He has leadership and he has experience. He's played a lot. So that's one of the things that I try to get across sometimes. It's like we want the splash, we want the 5 stars, we want the guys that we can immediately see the field and make an impact. But some of the best stories are the guys that stick around and fight through things and end up making valuable plays down the line in your program. Guys like a DJ Brown, who's solid. He's going to always be in the right spot. He's a great leader, great mentor for the safeties. Great guy, great locker room guy, beloved by his teammates. His story is just as good as Jalen Sneed's. It's not as flashy. Might not get to the NFL at the same level, but his story is just as good. And honestly, just as important if we're talking about the 4 for 40 brand that Notre Dame stands on. It's just as important. So, the camaraderie that Cam Hart talks about within that room and how they hear the wide receivers chirping, just like, man, Tobias Merriweather said they hear the defensive backs chirping and they're ready to go out there and compete every day. You have to love hearing that. We talked about Lorenzo Styles Jr. playing wide receiver and defensive back. We told you and gave you clarity in the situation. It's not about him doing anything wrong or that he's done anything wrong. It's more about him wanting to make more of an impact and wanting the opportunity to make more of an impact on a down-to-down basis for the football team. This dude is a workout warrior. Go look at the video. You already heard, right? You already heard Benjamin Morrison talk about him. Benjamin Morrison, he's the best cornerback you got. Benjamin Morrison, like, this dude can do everything. He's strong, physical, can run, jump. Like, Zoe can do everything. He's talented. He just wants to find a way to make sure that he can get the talent out so it can benefit the team. He talked about it, the transition and playing a defensive back.
I think it was too difficult. There's definitely some technical stuff, but athletically I still feel pretty good at that position. It's just really refining technical things and just working on that every single day. This just takes some consistency.
Lorenzo, with the transition, what have you learned about yourself from a mental standpoint?
I think I'm a football player. Either way, receiver, DB, wherever the team really needs me at, I can help make an impact. I'm willing to do it.
That's all he wants to do. He wants to make an impact. That's all the young man has ever wanted to do, make an impact. And like I said, he can end up being just as beautiful a story as Drake Bowen or Jalen Sneed, right? That's why everyone sits up in front on what's happening right now, coming off that Fiesta Bowl when he put up big numbers in the second half of that freshman season when he was balling. Everybody else thought he was going to be a dude at wide receiver. Stop lying. Coming into last season, most people thought Lorenzo Styles Jr. was going to be a dude at wide receiver. He'll be the first to admit that he failed himself and his teammates. It's not even about us. He failed himself and his brothers on multiple levels. He'll tell you that. He'll be the first to tell you that. And he's frustrated. And he went hard, super hard, with Matt Balis in the offseason, improving. because he wants to make an impact. He believes in himself. He believes in his talent, right? I don't. I don't know. Let me drop this. Do you guys really feel that when players walk on the field that they're thinking about the fans? I wish Malik was here because I feel like I'm about to hurt some feelings. And if there are young Notre Dame fans listening, um, cut this off because I don't want because I'm this is a grown conversation, and maybe it helps some fans to kind of level their fandom. Football players are trained that it's about them, the coaches, and the team. They're not trained that it's about fans. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. They don't think about fans when they're in the tunnel. They're appreciative of the fans, but the fans are not part of their focus when it comes to winning football games. So when I say that he let himself down and let his brothers down, that's pretty much the extent of it. That's the biggest hurt for him. Now, if you put him in front of a camera and he gets to be PC, then every football player is like, yeah, I let the fans down. That's not the core of football players. That's not why they play. They play for that dude next to them. They play for their coaches. They play for their team. That's the core of the motivation. Everything else is beneficiaries of what happens on the inside of that core. So fans, we're on the outside of that core. We're on the outside of that. We're beneficiaries of that. So I would disagree. I've never. This is why I said the DJ Brown story is just as good as the Jalen Sneed story. Because I'm intrigued by people that go through adversity and overcome and still leave with a degree from the University of Notre Dame, still leave with the respect of their brothers, and still end up making plays on the field that win games for Notre Dame. Two different stories, but when you're preaching to high school kids, come to Notre Dame because it's bigger than football, both of those stories matter. Both of those stories matter. And both of those stories are just as important. They're just as important. So you have a twisted view. Sometimes we have a twisted view of these kids. At the end of the day, when they walk through that tunnel, they don't care. The team on the other side doesn't care how much money they're making in NIL. Marshall didn't give a darn about how much Michael Mayer made in NIL. Because it doesn't matter when you go in between those lines. It just doesn't. And that's the beautiful thing about having the opportunity to spend time around the young men that have played for the University of Notre Dame. Most of them will tell you, especially from the 18 and 19 teams, there are a lot of players in that team that will tell you, yo, the way things were inside the program, we played for each other. The players will tell you this. They'll tell you that. We played for each other. They play for the fans. Play for each other. As a fan, I just happen to be a beneficiary of the work, the effort, the blood, sweat, and tears that they've chosen to give. That's it. And I'm greatly appreciative each and every day. So when I hear Styles talk about, yeah, I just want to make winning plays. Yo, I appreciate that, young man. Special teams, offense, defense, whatever. He's the only athlete drafted today, if I'm not mistaken, in the draft. Lorenzo Styles Jr. You have to love it. So what do we talk about today? Make me better. Make me better. Something that Chancey Stuckey, Mike Mickens, and their players have chosen and pretty much gone out and done for each other this spring. Wide receivers and cornerbacks have made each other better in practice. And we'll get to see who wins what matchups on Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium. Now, some things that stood out from the draft, Jabron Payne being the number 1 overall pick. Shout out to Jabron. Um, yo, I've been thoroughly impressed with the young man. Thoroughly impressed with the young man. Thoroughly. His ability to cut back. He overcame injuries. Both of their young running backs last year were injured. Jadarian Price with the Achilles, Jabron Payne with the hamstrings. So you'll be seeing both of those guys this fall. Jabron Payne had an incredible spring, runs hard. He was taken before Audric Estime, which was shocking because I expected Audric Estime to be the number 1 pick. Jalen Sneed was the number 1 linebacker taken. And the fact that Drake Bowen was right behind him, hey, but he's not athletic. He's slow. That's what they say, right? Okay. 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 All right. And someone pointed out there was a long list. It seemed like a list of about 20 guys that aren't participating via injury. And I might be overstating that, but it seemed like the list was pretty long. It really did. Notre Dame, thank you for tapping in today. Do you think Notre Dame should use more 4 wide receiver sets? Why not? I mean, that's all dependent upon the opponent. It's dependent upon the opponent and the trust you have in the offensive line. Because they have finally the talent to consistently go out there and to be able to run those type of sets, right? So especially run them at a high tempo, catch teams off balance and keep them on their heels. So yes, I think they should use it at certain times against certain opponents, especially if you're going to have, with both quarterbacks. I would use the 4 wide receiver set with both quarterbacks. Let's see. John Long, come on, bro. Come on. Who did Ricky Hatton beat? Let's come on now. Who did Ricky Hatton beat? I don't put a stamp on you until, like, I can put a stamp on Shakur Stevenson and all of these young guys. They haven't fought anybody. They look great. They're knocking out bums. They haven't beaten anybody. Ricky Hatton didn't beat anybody. And as soon as he faced somebody with talent like Money Mayweather, he got knocked out and embarrassed. And then got embarrassed even worse his next fight. So we just view the game different. That's all. You're hype until you fight somebody good. And do it against somebody good. You're hype to me. Shakur Stevenson is hype right now. Why? He hasn't beat anybody. He hasn't beat anybody. Who has he beat? Who has he beat? I'm fair across the board. Show me. Show me. I don't care nothing about knocking everybody out that's bums. I know when he faced Floyd, he got embarrassed. It wasn't even close. That's hype. You know who wasn't hype? Sugar Ray Leonard, because he did it against Thomas Hearns. Thomas Hearns wasn't hype because he did it against Arguello. He did it against, he battled and had the fight won against Sugar Ray until he got knocked out in the 15th round. He had one of the greatest short fights against Hagler and battled and had Hagler in trouble before Hagler came back. Going up against the best and getting embarrassed? No, sir. I can't rock with you on that one. That's hype. You didn't do anything. That's all hype, in my opinion. He did beat Castillo, right? Look. That's all. We just view things different in the fight game. Somebody asked me, I'm rolling with Tank. I'm rolling with Tank. I'm rolling with Tank on Saturday night. I just got a gut feeling, man. I think Ryan Garcia is going to show very well. I just got a gut feeling about Tank. I really, watching the All Access, I've really come to like Ryan Garcia even more. I really have. I love the young man, his story, his family. Man, I really do. I love his personality, what he brings to the boxing game. Boxing needs more of that. But, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to rock with Tank on Saturday night. Yeah, I think I'm going to rock with that. Shoot. Lennox Lewis, I'll give you a perfect example. Lennox Lewis was hyped to me. And then he came across and handled some of the best heavyweights, and it's like, okay, right? Lennox Lewis did what Anthony Joshua couldn't do. Anthony Joshua was all hype. Came across, got smacked up. Got smacked up by lesser talent. So, man, when you have Lennox Lewis, that's all hype, coming across the seas, really wasn't respected because he was coming from England and got in there with the best of the best. Jay Lamont, stop, man. Man, none of those guys are athletically on the same level as Shakur Stevens. Stop. Stop begging. Stop begging. He has to beat the top contenders. Other than that, he's hype. If he goes in there against Devin Haney and he gets handled by Devin Haney and gets knocked out, he's hype. Shakur Stevenson was head and shoulders better than everybody on that list. Who had a legitimate shot to beat Shakur Stevens on the list of people you just named? Who? Just because they're a contender doesn't make them viable to say, oh, this is a dude. No, that's not how it goes. No, that's not how it goes. Y'all go by these, y'all, man. Really? We're going by contenders? Valdez was not even a shit. Valdez and definitely Herring. And Yoshino? Are you kidding me? These fights were easy for Shakur. Easy. I'm not looking at easy fights trying to give somebody credit. Shakur Stevenson, until he fights a Devin Haney or someone of equal skill, no. Beat somebody or compete against somebody of equal skill. Then I'll take the hype off. Until then, I'm sorry. Can't give it to you. As I said before, we just have different views. I didn't say he wasn't uber talented. I didn't say he wasn't a dude. But you got to fight somebody. And none of the dudes you named are anything close to him from a talent standpoint. You keep typing the same thing. None of those guys, listen, name somebody that was equal to him in talent. Who has he beaten that was just as talented as him? Who? Because none of the fighters you named are equal to him in talent. None of them. I don't care about rankings. I don't care about undefeated. Who was equal to him in skill and talent? Stop looking at numbers. Know the boxing game. Who was equal to him in skill and talent? There's a lot of dudes out there undefeated that end up being bums. I don't care about that. Who was equal to him in skill and talent? Who? You keep saying stop it, but you can't name a name. Who was equal to Shakur Stevenson in talent? Who? 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 Who has he faced that's just as good as Devin Haney? Who? The same thing with Devin Haney. He hasn't faced anybody. That's the problem with boxing. No one fights anybody. They go fight fighters that they're better than. And you hype them up because, oh, they're ranked number 1. Oh, they're ranked number 2. Oh, they were undefeated. They're not as good. They're not as good. TCU was undefeated. Did that make them as good as Georgia? No. Everybody knew going into that Georgia TCU game that Georgia was about to sink TCU. And every time I see Shakur Stevenson go into a fight, it takes one round for me to realize this dude is not even close to Shakur. They're not. So now you just want to argue. You don't understand tiers where guys are here and guys are here. And just because you're not here, it doesn't mean you're trash. You're just not here. You're not on the same level. He has not beat anybody that's on the same level as him. He hasn't. And you keep going to the left, name a name of a boxer that was just as good as Shakur Stevenson when they fought. You can't. You can't. Because he hasn't faced anybody as good as him yet. He hasn't. And until he fights Devin Haney, Lomachenko, or someone along those lines, that's when he proves himself. That is when he proves himself. Lomachenko has had to come back from the loss he had. And he's building himself back up. Matter of fact, I think Shakur Stevenson said he wanted Lomachenko next. So, because he said Devin Haney doesn't want him right now. So, there lies the problem. Lucky Lefty podcast. Hey, no petty training today. I'm getting out of here. Got my stuff ready. I'm suited, booted. About to get up here to the bend. It's going to be a great weekend, guys. Great weekend. Tap in with us. If you're in the area, Malik will be I'm sorry, we're getting emails from the people in South Bend. But, we'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll send out an announcement. Left has a meeting from 4 to 7. So come out if you're in the South Bend area. Meet up with Left and myself from 4 to 7 in the South Bend area. We'll send information via Twitter and Instagram later on today. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Most of all, make sure that you spit it. Oh, there you go. Yeah.